Well, here we are 1 week later, episode 3 of the Mask of Fear Live, joined by Randy and Johnny. We'll be handing hosting duties off to Johnny in one moment. Last week, obviously, we discussed the Halloween TV series, and then I believe it was nothing like hearing an echo in your ears. Um, one day after we were last live, some newish information came to light about a change at Miramax, a significant change. The head of Miramax Television, who acquired the rights to the Halloween TV series, Mr. Mark Helwig, is out. Someone else is in, and that's usually not good news. The question is, will they pivot to a movie? More on that after this.
We all wear masks, but tonight we wear the mask of fear. I am your host, Johnny, and it is truly a pleasure to be here with you wherever you are and whenever you're watching this episode, be it live or later. We got a lot of, I don't want to say we got a lot, but we got enough. We got some good stuff to talk about tonight. It's going to be exciting. As always, we got news, like Sean said, off the cold open. New stuff. We had a new trailer for What You Did Last Summer drop today. If you haven't watched the full reaction video, I don't know, over the channel, check that out. Like, subscribe, all that stuff over there as well. Comment on that if you haven't, but we'll talk about it here as well tonight. And joining me, as always, my co-hosts, my colleagues, my friends. Randy, how you doing tonight?
I am tired as hell, but that's because I've had to put a lot of work in the past couple of days. I got a few days off coming up here, so pretty ready for that. I'm excited. I'm getting to see 28 years later on Thursday with my friend. I'm pretty excited for that movie as well. But other than that, it's like I said, this always seems to be the cure for Monday trying to just take me out on Monday and Tuesday. So I'm ready to go.
And down below, as always, you saw him in the cold open if you were here for that. Sean, how you doing tonight?
I'm the same as that guy up there. I'm friggin' tired. A lot of work going on in this channel. I know some of you have noticed it and reached out to comment about it. We really appreciate the compliments that you guys have sent, whether it's publicly or posted on the channel or to me privately. We're all doing our part right now. Randy is playing a bit of a producer role of sorts and much more active on Facebook. Johnny's been really handling the Mask of Fear group, posting a bunch of stuff over there. There's a handful of us doing the Legacy Halloween group, which is always not easy to keep up with when you have 300,000 plus members. And then obviously just various content over here and producing content with Ryan over at Colic Nation. So excited to get into tonight's show. With our luck, though, something will come to light tomorrow or the next day that wasn't in time for the live show. Again, that always seems to. That's happened to us from since day one, man.
It absolutely has. Which I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that today is a special day.
I know it's
very special day.
It's an incredibly special day. Johnny has watched the Elm Street remake for the 50th time.
That's
he raves about it in our private chat all the time.
Oh.
And I've seen it a handful of times, but this guy just can't get enough of it. And kudos to Johnny. Kudos to Johnny on watching Elm Street for the
yeah, no, not that. No, I was convinced to go to a movie theater to watch that movie with a specific someone who happens to be on the bottom side of the screen. We got stuck in the shitty seats in the front third, like the on the floor seats where you got to crane your neck up and look like this to see the screen. Yeah, we were stuck in those, and it was a shitty movie. So no, I have not watched it again since, and I will not watch it again since, unless somebody wants to kick in a giant Patreon thing to make us watch it. Otherwise, that's not happening. Never. No way, no sir, no how.
This is the man who had given up on Andor, by the way. I'm just saying. Maybe, they might be two different levels of quality.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I'm right about
just a wee bit.
I'm right about the Elm Street movie. I was wrong about Andor, but yeah, no, no siree, no way, no how, no way, no, no. What I'm referring to, of course, is we've talked about it before. Today is in fact our 10-year anniversary of podcasting. This is the exact 10 years to the day since we recorded the very first episode of Wastelands.
I still have that episode.
I still have those notes.
Oh boy, that was like an almost 4-hour show, I believe.
Let me just, when I say notes, what I in fact mean is script, because we were so differently prepared back then that someone might have taken things a little gustovely and had us print out a 10-page script for the first episode. We've come a long way in 10 years. We've finally figured it out, and the notes are a page now.
Hey, Kenny's in the chat too, by the way, who was at that first episode of Star Wars Wastelands
Definitely
back on
was.
Channel
The
11.
OG day one guy.
Shout out to the audience over there too. We had horrible technical difficulties with the first episode of the show, and the audience didn't let up. They supported us. They were interested in a new show on that channel, and it was a fun time. And shout out to our former co-host Mondo, who we know is out and about and doing things and living life. And without Mondo, we're not here doing this today.
That is 110% true. But I would have been remiss if I didn't bring that up and point out that this is the exact 10-year anniversary of our doing this. So, yeah, fun times for that. Oh boy, our Dark Knight viewing experience was not fun. Let me tell you that.
The heater breaking.
Oh boy,
the fence breaking.
Sean and I went to see that.
My first wife was 4 days from giving birth to our first child too. So
jam-packed theater in the end of July, beginning of August, and there's no fucking air conditioner in the theater. Everybody is sweating their balls off. It was not in any way a fun experience.
Well, since you guys got to say your best movie experience, or
I don't think we did. I think we're talking about our worst movie experience.
Well, we got to ask a question about our best movie experience too.
We did.
I'm trying to find that in the chat here, guys. Which one? Kenny. It's Kenny.
Okay, yeah.
We'll get to your. I know Johnny's got more to go through in the intro, but maybe we'll kick off in celebration of 10 years. We'll kick off this reminder to everyone. If you want to send in a super chat, not only does it help support the channel a ton, it helps us out because doing this thing isn't cheap. But it makes sense to start off with Kenny, who's been with us since day one. It's a toss up for me. Okay. And I know it's a cop out answer when, you ask one question, I'm going to give you 3 answers, but it's a trifecta for the first place. Revenge of the Sith with Johnny and I's friend Greg, opening night, midnight release. Back then there was not reserved seating, so we're sitting in a theater line with like 250 people just talking about Star Wars for 2.5 hours. That was badass. We also went mini putting that night too. A bunch of us did that night actually. The other one would be The Force Awakens with Johnny and a few others. We froze, but seeing that after 10 years of waiting was incredible. And then for me personally, Halloween 2018 at the Toronto International Film Festival, like that was everything and more than I ever thought it would be.
It's hard not to. I agree with that. I mean, I think for me, the best ones are probably the ones that involve the day event stuff we did. Rogue One, we did a day event with the local X-Wing community, which sparked passion for me in that.
That was The Last Jedi.
I thought it was Rogue One. We did too.
Rogue One was we went to Teddy's in the snowstorm. And The Last Jedi was with Ian at the X-Wing group.
We did two with the X-Wing group because there was the one we did at Brew, and then we did the one in Curtis.
The one in Curtis was, I don't know if that was day of, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, that must have been after that because Ian was the one in downtown Oshawa.
Ian was with us one at Brew, and then we did the one that we did the one in Curtis where we did the Star Wars TTRPG one shot where you tried to get me arrested in the middle of an RPG.
I have no idea what he's talking about. Every time I play Star Wars: The Old Republic with this guy, I try to be the good, honest guy, making all the good, wise decisions, and this guy would be just trying to go dark side all the time.
That ain't right. Well, I digress. If we stay on this, we'll stay on this all night, and we got
well,
stuff.
I'll give mine real quick then. Yeah. So for me, it was definitely The Force Awakens. A friend of mine bought out the entire theater and basically sold tickets to any like-minded Star Wars fan he could find. And basically, we were also in one of those theaters that basically no kids are allowed. So there were no screaming children. It was just all adults enjoying the return of Star Wars. It was an absolutely amazing moment.
I think we had close to like 75% of the theater when we saw whichever one the bigger event was for. Great stuff. Love that stuff. All right, guys, let's get down to business of the show. We'll start things off with our first multiple choice question for this video. And that first question is this. Are you satisfied with how the Jason universe handled Friday the 13th this past Friday? There we go. That's the one. Yes, it was good. I was good with it. No, it was a mess. Or C, it was absolutely terrible. So that's A, yes, I was good with it. B, no, it was a mess. And C, it was absolutely terrible. All right, those are your options for your first multiple choice of the show. We'll do one in each segment, or most of the segments. We don't quite have multiple choices for the other segments, but we do have questions. So we will get to that. But before we get started on the show, we would be remiss, obviously, if we didn't thank the people who support us outside of being here every week. Those are, of course, our Patreon supporters. And, of course, without them, we would not be here. So we will start with these guys. These are just the regular subscribers at the different tiers. So without them, we appreciate each and every one of you guys. We love each and every one of you guys. And, of course, on top of that, we have the sponsors. Without them, we're not here. Without you guys over there, it's so hard to do this stuff without you guys. We appreciate each and every one of you. And, of course, that is Ryan at Colleague Nation. If you're a NASCAR fan, head on over there, check that out, and get all of your NASCAR news. Jason at Backtrack Cinema. If you love your old school films, retro horror, he is the guy to go to. And, of course, Jesse's Storytime Spectacular. Just all sorts of crazy, fun, great stuff in the pop culture world. So if you're a fan of that, head over and check him out. And we appreciate each and every one of you guys. If you want to get your name added to that list, head on over to patreon.com/themaskofear and join one of the tiers where you can pick and choose, decide what you want, which tier, which speaks most to you. Speaks most to you. These are your 5 tiers. You got the squared circle tier, the beyond the wall tier, the Curse of Thorn tier, the Legacy of Halloween tier, and of course the VIP sponsorship tier. And if you join the Curse of Thorn tier or higher, the first episode of the Curse of Thorn exclusive monthly Halloween show is set to be recorded this Thursday to be released this Friday. So if you want to be a part of that, check that out. They're talking about the Halloween series and deep diving into the treatments for that.
Yeah, it should be a fun show. We did a couple of, I guess, we did a video on some of the information. We covered more information on a live stream, and then part 3 of the information that we had will be talked about on that Patreon show, available at the Curse of Thorn tier. And then coming up the following week on the Legacy of Halloween tier, we're going to get into all the behind-the-scenes stuff with Halloween Kills, including what almost happened but didn't, and how we chose to cover our content, and maybe some of the risks that were involved with that. So you can check out both of those things coming up in the very near future.
All right, so it is time to enter our first segment where you can't have the mask of fear without horror. So let's put on the horror mask of your favorite horror villain and enter the horror segment. And with you this week, we have another multiple choice question for you.
No graphics, so don't wait on the graphic.
No graphics, don't wait on the graphic. All right, option A. The question is, do you prefer a Halloween series or movie to be the next project? All right, not a multiple choice question, just a question. Do you prefer a Halloween series or movie to be the next project, or does it just not matter to you? So leave your comment down below and tell us what you would like to see next out of the Halloween franchise, movie, series, or you don't care, you just want to see Halloween. And I don't mean the holiday. I mean the movie series, franchise, I guess. Movie series doesn't really
holiday.
work.
You showing your colors?
I got nothing against. I love the holiday. The holiday falls the day before my birthday. How could I not love the holiday? Halloween candy one night, birthday cake the next. Come on now, that was a very sweet childhood, and I pun intended there. So I digress. Let's move on to our first topic, and that is we have more casting for the Crystal Lake series. Peacock is rounding out its series regular cast, by adding Dylan Kessler, who's featured previously in Godfather of Harlem, Cameron Scoggins, who's appeared on Shades of Blue in Nashville, and Gwendolyn Sundstrom. They, of course, joined the previously announced stars Linda Cardellini and William Catlett in the prequel series produced by Brad Caleb Kane, who will serve as the writer, showrunner, executive producer. We know Cardellini's playing Pamela Voorhees, who's, of course, the mother of Jason. Kessler is set to play Brianna Brooks. Scoggins will play Dorf. And Sundstrom will play Grace. Those are some interesting names. I'll say that. All right, guys, what do you think here? This is it. Rounding out the cast. These are the last of the main cast that is to be announced based on what we know so far. The rounding out of the lead cast. What do you think about this? Do you know any of these people? Are you excited at their castings? Are they faces you're familiar with? Or are they, people you'll have to learn about as we get closer and closer to this? Randy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, these are definitely, to me, they're unknowns. So I'm just happy we're getting more casting news. It just means that one step closer to getting things rolling and finally getting to see the series of what they have planned. Obviously, I'll just have to really get acquainted with these people and kind of see what they're all about. But ultimately, it's going to be about the story, right? We got character names, but really, what roles do they ultimately play in the story? So as long as they do their part and they play their part well, I can't. I won't complain about the casting. Obviously, if it's the other way around, where it's like completely totally miscast for the type of character they're trying to portray, then obviously I'm going to have gripes. But until I see the finished product, or at least a trailer, something to get an idea of what these people are really going to be doing in the series, I'm just going to take that wait and see approach.
Sean?
Oh boy. I'm incredibly underwhelmed by this. And I'll sort of echo Randy's sentiments and say, I don't know any of these people, and that's not to say that they're bad. It doesn't mean that, the only good actors and actresses out there are the ones that I've heard of. That's not the case. But when you look at most of their background, their catalog, if you will, there's not much experience there. And just between who's now listed to direct in comparison to who was rumored when Brian Fuller was in charge, including cast members that were rumored when Brian Fuller was in charge. Look, we know the main reason Brian Fuller was dismissed from the project was not necessarily creative differences, but an inability to keep the budget under control and what the show was going to cost. Now, I do agree, you probably can't have 8 episodes of Crystal Lake cost $80 million and get away with it. That's a bit high. But it feels to me like we've gone the other direction, and it'll be lucky if it's a third of that at this point. And look, I'm not saying you have to spend a ton of money to get really good quality, but the more I've heard about this project over the last couple of weeks, the more it, including some images that have been released of like set pieces and stuff, certain bicycles and other things around the camp. My confidence in the project has taken a hit. Doesn't mean I'm not going to give it a shot. Doesn't mean I'm not going to watch it the first day it comes out. Doesn't mean that we won't be covering it here at the channel, because I think all those things are a given, that we will be doing that. But like, we're talking about the guy who was in charge of Hannibal, and then we move on to a guy who really doesn't have, many wins in his basket. And I know people are going to be like, well, Welcome to Derry. Well, you haven't seen Welcome to Derry yet, so you can't say that that's a win. And also, there's a big difference between dealing with HBO money and dealing with whatever scraps you're getting from A24 and Peacock. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but the cast is incredibly underwhelming. It's more so underwhelming the day that this announcement came out on, after all the hype and teasing that was going around. But you can check that video out tomorrow on the channel, where we talk about the Jason universe's handling of Friday the 13th that just passed in comparison to Womp Stomp Films. It's a video I was very passionate about to do, and that'll release tomorrow, so I don't want to tip my hat too much there, but it just doesn't inspire much confidence, guys. I hope I'm wrong. It's starting to feel like more of the same. Let's just make it feel like it was in the 80s. And I got to be honest, I know there's some people probably clamoring for that, but to me, there's no point in doing this series if that's all you're going to do. It should not just feel like Friday the 13th part 1 or part 2 or part 3 or any of the parts. It should feel like something different. It doesn't mean that there can't be some of that DNA there. There should be, to tell that it is a Friday the 13th property. But it should also offer you something new. And that's not to say that it's not going to do that. I'm simply saying over the last couple of weeks, I'm less confident that it's going to do that. And that's disappointing, because if you want what's already come, go watch the shit that's already been released. And if you're going to do something new, do something different.
I mean, I can't say I'm totally familiar with any of these. Cameron Scoggins, I am a bit more familiar with. I did watch Shades of Blue when it was on. That was one of the shows that I mentioned he was on there. I enjoyed that show. Ray Liotta and Jennifer Lopez cop show that was on like it was 2017, 2018, something like that. Looking at pictures, I vaguely remember the character. I don't remember much with it. I didn't watch Nashville, but I know lots of other people that have, so I can't really speak to that. Devin Kessler, Godfather of Harlem. I love Godfather of Harlem. I haven't watched this most recent season, but that's one of those shows that I have not seen a bad performance in it. It's one of those, if you're there, you're talented types of shows. Which, if you're not familiar with that one, that is the it's one of the networks in this. I think now it's MGM Plus. It's the Forrest Whitaker series where he plays Bumpy Johnson. They had it was a movie based on his life as well. It was good. Like I mean, there's resume there. To get on that show, I think you have to have some talent. Gwendolyn Sundstrom, I did a quick Google search on her while we were doing this, and she's in 4 projects, none of which are out yet. So she is very new to Hollywood in general. So I no sort of resume there that I can point to. Be like, well, I'm still excited. I am cautiously excited for it. I was a huge fan of this when we were still, under the previous plans and everything, and previous runners and everything. I guess, Brian Fuller's, he did a freaking amazing job with Hannibal. So obviously I was excited for that. But, Brad Kane for me is not the same, but he does have sort of a 1 in my column because he produced the first season of Fringe. I love that show. And I definitely think the first season was the best season of that show. For me, personally, I always thought it was the best season. So knowing he kind of had a hand in that is a bit more, I don't want to say reassuring, but it tells me that he can handle some degree of weird, if that makes sense. Like, if you didn't watch the show, you wouldn't understand, but it is definitely not your normal show. It's a thinking show. You have to kind of keep yourself on your toes the whole way to understand what's going on. I personally loved it. It is one of my favorite shows that Fox has done in this century, personally. For me, anyway, I still watch it. I have the box set. I still watch it every now and again. I enjoy it that much. But it's going to be interesting to see, like we said, we keep saying, this is going to be interesting. We're excited, cautiously optimistic. But I don't know. The cast looks good on paper. We've seen that go both ways. That's where it definitely cuts on both sides. We just have to wait and see. I hate that that's the answer, but until we actually see it, we don't know what it is. Sean made the jokes about my love of Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, yeah, the sequel sucked. The new one sucked, but on paper, that should have been great. On paper. Obviously it wasn't. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But, we will get more and more as we get closer and closer, and as things start filming and teasers and trailers and stuff like that start coming out, and we see, clips and pictures and, more pictures of things that aren't just, set dressing and set design. We'll get a better idea of what we can expect for this show. So, all right, let's move on to our next topic. And obviously, we definitely dropped a movie. We dropped a full video here on the channel last Thursday, I believe, about this very topic. I was either Thursday or Friday. That Miramax has gone through a change at the top, and how this would affect the Halloween franchise. If you want the full scoop on that, head to the channel and check out the full video of that Sean put out at the end of last week when this news first dropped. What do you think? It's as to where this is going. Are we going to pivot? Are we not going to pivot? We had the Ross jokes in the chat earlier. I was going to save them for myself, but chat kind of stole my thunder by making the Ross jokes in chat. So I'm, credit where credit's due. Chat made the Ross joke first because I was saving it for the segment. But what do you think? Do you think they're going to pivot? Do you think they should pivot? What do you think? What do you feel? What are your thoughts on this, Randy?
So, given how close we are to the 50th anniversary, and the fact that we haven't seen a script for the TV series, we haven't really seen any casting news. We haven't seen anything that, because of obviously what's happening with Miramax, it feels like at this point, if they want to put something out, uh, the smartest thing to do would be to move to a movie, just for the sake of putting content out, because we know that they don't have a director, they don't have a script, they don't have anybody signed yet. We're June, so now once they finally get their ducks in a row, it's all going to be about, finding a director, finding producers, finding writers, getting cast set up, getting everything they need set up just to start a movie, or even a TV series for that matter. And still, regardless, one or the other, it's still going to take time. I don't see them fast tracking much of anything. If they do, that's kind of like just a slap in the face to the fans, especially with such you know, a monumental anniversary coming up as the 50th. So your best bet is to probably at least give us something. It doesn't have to be a TV series, but it should be at least a movie, bare minimum, just so you can be like, here, this is for the fans. I believe that it would be and it'd make good money. And if you do it right, you could leave the door open to transition into your TV series if you so choose to still go that route. But ultimately, you got to give us something. Stop this radio silence. The fans deserve better. And I feel like until we hear something, I'm going to say that the TV series probably isn't going to happen before a movie.
Always with the mute. No, can't go one episode without somebody getting eaten by that damn thing. Sean, what about you? Do you have anything that you didn't say in the video?
Well, just to correct a couple of Randy's points here. They were working with writers. They were working with several writers. The problem is they hadn't, honed in on one guy or one showrunner. And I know there was some interest in Flanagan, who's just way too busy. I don't know if it got past the treatment stage. All the information that we have is based off of 2 treatments that they were strongly considering, neither of which included Loomis or Laurie. I can't sit here and say that they didn't have cast in mind. I know early on Sydney Sweeney was the name that was being eyed. They were in negotiations at one point with the Starz Network to do something with them alongside Hulu, and I forgot what the third one is now. So there was a bunch of moving pieces to this thing. And they were going down a path where they thought they were progressing to something. And that's not to say that we don't find out a month from now that something has progressed. But the simple fact is, when the head of a studio, specifically the head of Miramax Television, who acquired their TV rights, leaves, it's not just those or that project that gets put on the table to be looked at. It's every upcoming project that Miramax TV is doing. The new head of Miramax TV I think it's Alex Jaffe, will come in there and look at everything and decide, this is what we're keeping, this is what we're getting rid of, and this is what we're not sure on at the moment. And I have a hunch that the Halloween series, which did have a working title, by the way, and we will talk about that on our Patreon video that'll come out Friday. I'm guessing it falls under that category. Now, it's purely speculation on my behalf. There's been no cancellation, confirmation, but we also haven't had official word. And we're going to have a video coming out soon that specifically breaks down what Hellwig's comments were, and then follows events that happened after those comments. And it's sort of a little timeline, and you can draw your own conclusion from there. And quite simply, the conclusion that you're going to draw, if you're really looking at the facts in terms of what was officially talked about on an official capacity, and given how much time had passed, the conclusion you draw is not going to be a good one. You'd be stupid to not do something for the 50th anniversary. And I'm not just talking about a convention. They want something. I firmly believe their hope was to get a season of TV out, followed by the movie, and have both of those things out before the 50, or one before the 50, one at the 50. At this point, Miramax and Trancas co-own the movie rights. Miramax head of movies has not changed. So I could very well see a possibility where they just decide, you know what, this whole cinematic universe thing, it's not going anywhere. Let's turn our attention towards a movie, because it would be a complete failure to the franchise, to the fans of the franchise, to not have something in cinemas or on TV screens by 2028. And if they're not confident in what's coming on TV, then you pivot to a movie. We just talked about how Brian Fuller's Crystal Lake was going to cost $80 million, fellas. And that was the main reason why he was let go. To put things into perspective, that is more by a significant margin than the entire Blumhouse Gordon Green trilogy cost. Now, that doesn't include marketing. It's before marketing. But still, you can probably turn around a movie on the cheap. But to me, it falls under the same category as Crystal Lake. Don't do the same old thing just for the sake of doing the same old thing. Now, I do like Rhino's suggestion in the chat earlier that maybe you turn back the clock with Danielle Harris and you do some sort of 40 years later with Halloween 4. I'm biased. That's my favorite Halloween movie. But at the end of the day, they're going to be celebrating 50 years. They want a movie. And the more time they take with this TV stuff, the less likely it is to have a movie ready for that time. So not only do I hope they've pivoted to a movie, I firmly believe that those wheels are turning. At the end of the day, Malaka Cat is very protective of his father's franchise. Obviously, Mustafa passed away tragically many years ago. I think that his goal is to make sure we have something by 50 years. You'll be 6 years removed from Halloween Ends. That's enough of a gap. I still hope we get a series before then, but as time goes on, the less likely it seems. You know, you look at shows like Smallville and Supernatural are in the minority of when there's a big change at a TV network, do they end up keeping the show? A lot of the times a show gets axed. In their two cases, those shows were almost axed, but somehow they found a way to survive. Now, whether that can continue to happen in Halloween's case remains to be seen. But time will tell. I would pivot to a movie.
I don't know. Personally, I think to me it comes down to money. I mean, that's the only thing that moves mountains in Hollywood is money. And I think how much they've spent on this series to this point will play a factor into that. I think there's obviously a certain point where they've put the money in, hiring and getting, treatments and writing and people like that. It's all going to come down to that. And, we don't know, we also don't know sort of the back end. We don't know how much, if any, discussion at all. Like, we know that this was likely heading to a streamer, but not which one. We didn't ever have any of those kind of details. We don't know, we don't know how far any of those negotiations might have gone, if there even have been any to this point. Like, it's, those are the question marks that make me wonder, what the possibilities on the table are, regardless of, someone new coming in, and, at the department, at the company. So it's just, there's going to be a period of transition. There's going to be a period of we have nothing but questions, and it is, going to. I don't want to say be a relatively quick solution, but I think there kind of has to be a relatively quick um, solution. And what that is, I don't know. I don't know what I'd do if I'd pivot to a movie or not. Right now, personally, I don't think I would. Not because of, anything like, fatigue or things like that. It just sort of trends right now and throughout the course of Hollywood.
Let me interject here for a second. Fatigue does not
No.
exist. It's not a thing. It's something people make up. It's if you do the right thing with a project, it can continue. We're talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which, by the way, has had way more releases than Halloween has in the last decade. And they have 5 massive bidders bidding for the rights to that franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this. You kind of pointed it out in terms of they don't have a streaming service attached or a TV deal attached for the TV series. Where with the movie stuff, they already have everything they need. You have Miramax, you have Trancas, you could bring in a third party, but technically they could proceed forward without having to do anything else. And I think that's where getting a movie off the ground, you could get a movie off the ground quicker than a series.
Yeah, no, you definitely can. I think, like I said, it's just it's going to come down to what they've already put into it, what they've already, discussed with others to this point. As far as those things go, that they can. I don't want to say that, the movie is sort of the last option, but I think it is sort of the break glass in case of emergency option, is to make that pivot. And I don't know if they're at that point yet, because as much as we want, those things, it's, I don't want to say we're a loud minority, but the almighty dollar is what's going to rule the day. And where they think they can make the most money is what's going to rule the day. And I think at this point, if we pivot to a movie, I think unfortunately I think at this point, if we pivot, it's not for a good reason. I think if we pivot now, it's more of the same. I don't think it's something that is going to necessarily shake the earth and change the franchise. I think it is just sort of more of the same. What that is, I don't know. And I don't mean, more of the same in that they can't do things. The H40 was, sort of discussed there. That's what I'm calling that now because I think it's funny. But, doing something like that, I think, is sort of more of the same, but different, if that makes sense. There are options on the table that you can, rehash, and I don't want to say reboot, but, go about that way in such a way that you can still do something while still sort of back pocketing your big plans to, I don't want to say change the franchise, but, to sort of establish, those ideas. But like we said, we'll keep talking about this, but as more and more, details slip out, we'll get more and more, information. And, who knows, maybe we'll hear something from someone, before it gets out, or maybe we won't. You never know. But like we said, we'll keep talking about this and we'll continue talking about this. So let's move on to our next topic. If you watched the channel earlier, you'll know that Sean did a reaction video to the I Know What You Did Last Summer trailer that dropped about 12 hours ago, around lunchtime today. Which if you haven't checked that out, head over, check that out, watch the trailer, watch the reaction, comment, like all that stuff to help us with the algorithm if you haven't already. I watched the trailer. I watched the reaction, but then I watched the trailer because that's just kind of sometimes how you do it. You watch the reaction and then you watch the trailer to get your own reaction because I knew we were talking about it tonight. So I watched the trailer again about an hour, less than that, about an hour ago, I'd say. Um, what did you think of the trailer? What went through your mind when you were watching the trailer, Randy?
So unfortunately, this franchise for me isn't in the forefront of like I was asking for a reboot, remake, rehash, whatever you want to call it. And when I watched the trailer, it was just kind of like, yeah, okay, we're getting a new movie. Um, it's not that I haven't seen any of the films. I've seen the first couple. First one's my favorite, if you want to call it a favorite. They just didn't really do it for me in terms of just movies in general. So watching this, really, I didn't get the emotional response as maybe anybody who's like just a huge diehard fan of it. So I'm just like, okay, it looks okay. I'll probably see it at some point, and we'll go from there. But yeah, unfortunately, this is not gonna be one of those movies I'll probably see in theater. I'll probably wait until it's on streaming.
I, I watched it. Um, I had, I don't want to say I had anything that really was like, oh my God, I got to see this, because there wasn't. It was sort of very much what I expected. I liked the callbacks to the original and seeing Freddie and Jennifer, always great. I liked sort of the way they, included the originals while adding on now, and it's definitely looks interesting to me. Not enough to go to a theater to see it with the ever rising cost there, but like Randy said, it's definitely something that I look forward to seeing when it hits streaming or digital release, where I can sit in my living room and watch it there versus going to a theater. So I I am excited for it, but not enough to go see it. Um, I did love the movies. I loved them when they came out in the late '90s. They were fun for me. They were people I enjoyed. I was a huge Buffy fan. Um, so seeing that, seeing her in there was fun, and the family watched. It was Party of Five. Jennifer Love Hewitt was on. So it's something I had in life as well. So they were people I was more from. They were a cast I was more familiar with than say the Scream movies. Um, but I am excited. I loved seeing Freddie in there, and hearing them talking about how to sort of deal with it and see how they tie it to the present. I thought those were all nice. I enjoyed it. It looked good. Like for a trip, had they not had the prequels, not the prequels, but had they not had the originals to fall back on, those are the only two I'm talking about. I know there were sequels after that, but they don't count. Um, for me anyway, they definitely don't count. But I'm excited for it. Like I said, not enough to go see it, but it definitely looks good. I'd say it looks better than I Still Know What You Did Last Summer did. This definitely is much more like the original than the sequel, I think. But we'll just have to wait and see. Sean, do you have anything to add that you didn't in the reaction video?
Um, Look, the trailer didn't do a lot to impress me, but as I mentioned in the reaction video, I had the luxury of being able to read some, we'll say, some leaky stuff within the last week or two, and it really does remind me a lot of Halloween 2018. And I do think they treat specifically the legacy characters with respect. Again, I don't know how old what I read was, because at one point Jennifer Love Hewitt's role in this movie was significantly smaller than what it ended up being. So I don't know how outdated what I read was, but what I read was intriguing, at least. Visually, I think it looks really good in the trailer. It looks like a modern day film. I actually like a lot of the lighting that's shown in there. I see a lot of bashing about this, fellas. I see a lot of, oh, someone got run over on the 4th of July again in the same area again. Really? Do we need to do the same thing? And these are the same people going, I want Michael Myers to stalk. I need Michael Myers to stalk. I need him to stalk, and I need the blue lighting, and I need Friday the 13th to be campy. And it's like, isn't that just a little bit hypocritical? Just a little bit.
I was expecting you to come after the Scream fans, but because they're the ones that I'm like, yeah, you know what? What? Come on.
Too, but we don't have enough time to spend on that.
Next time on Patreon.
This will not be an almost 3-hour show tonight because we have a Patreon recording tomorrow night, and then I have a Patreon recording Thursday, and we have videos to put out, and it's a really busy week here on the channel. The other thing that I don't get is, one of the upper-ups at Bloody Disgusting is taking shots at Freddie Prinze Jr. and, mocking him, being like, oh, the great Freddie Prinze Jr. is returning. I just kind of thought to myself, like, one, you wish you could act as good as Freddie did. Two, Freddie has made a sorry, didn't get to mute there in time. Freddie has made a living for himself in multiple ways. In the wrestling industry, as a voice actor in Star Wars. He's also acted in other things. Freddie Prinze Jr. is a much better actor today than he was when he made these movies back then. So throwing shade at the guy just because you didn't like him or his interpretation of Rey just doesn't make sense to me, especially when this same website doesn't fucking throw shade at Jamie Lee Curtis or Trankus or Universal at the time for completely misleading people on the marketing of Halloween Ends. No shade there, but let's attack Freddie Prinze Jr. before you've even seen the movie. Come the fuck on. Pull your head out of your ass.
Well, personally, I love Freddie. Definitely. For me, more hits than misses as a fan. I love watching the guy. Especially the off-the-wall shtick that he does. I don't know if any of you guys ever watched it, but he did a few episodes of Boston Legal. Fucking hilarious. His episode of Psych is one of my favorites. And if you've been around this channel for the better part of 10 years, that was a huge thing Mondo and I did, was love Psych. So, for him to be one of my favorite episodes, come on now. And Summer Catch is an underrated movie, okay? Underrated baseball movie, I'll say that. It gets quoted in my house quite frequently. Specifically the fart jokes from I almost said Skeet, and I know I sort of confused my my guys there. That was not Skeet. That was that was Matthew Lillard. That's who it was. Another thing, but I digress. That's just a funny movie. If you haven't seen it, you should, especially if you like sports movies. Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next topic. We don't have a next topic in this one. All right. But we do have big questions. Sean, you got a question for the audience?
Yeah. So what I would like to know from everybody before we move on from horror for the night, it's really simple. Out of the I Know What You Did Last Summer movies, which was your favorite? The first or the second movie? Randy alluded to a little bit earlier. If it's the first movie, type a 1 in the chat. If it's the second movie, type a 2 in the chat. If you want to provide why, feel free to do so. The second movie's an okay popcorn flick. I didn't mind the setting it was in. But that first movie, I actually think the first movie stands the test of time. I think the first movie is better than select entries in Halloween, in Scream, in Friday the 13th. That first movie is very well done. That Sarah Michelle Gellar chase scene too, that's as good of a chase scene as you're going to see. It was incredibly well done. I really appreciate what they did with that. Yeah. So how do you feel about I Know What You Did Last Summer? Don't say the TV series. Thank you to Rhino for pointing this out. The TV series, I cannot believe I gave up on it, honestly. I stopped after a couple of episodes. Was abysmal. Quick cash grab. Fucking awful. Should also be noted, Sony Pictures is doing this film too. So there's they'll have some marketing and have had some marketing behind it. I do think while it might not turn out to be the best thing since sliced bread or whatever, I think that it will definitely make you forget that god-awful straight to physical media release of the third movie and the TV series. I think it'll be more in line with 1 and 2. And again, from what I've read and what I've saw, if you enjoy Halloween 2018, you might enjoy this movie.
If somehow your answer to the which one is your favorite is the third one, blink twice if you need help.
Well, we know Johnny's is the third one. I mean, he loves the Elm Street remake the most.
Are you aware of what happens if people lie too often? They get struck by lightning. Be careful outside. You are treading on dangerous ground tonight. Also, I know there's bears in your neck of the woods. Liars are tasty. I'm just saying.
Seen 2 today already. 2. But both babies.
You know what? Where there's babies, there's mama. So.
Oh, no doubt.
All right, let's take off your favorite horror mask and let's put on your favorite Mandalorian mask. It's now time to... I'm jumping ahead. I am skipping an entire segment in my notes, so let's not do that. Let's rewind 3 seconds. Let's take off your Mandalorian mask, put it to the side because you're going to need it in a few minutes, and put on your favorite video game mask. Are you a Spartan? Put on your Spartan helmet. All right, let's jump right into our multiple choice question. And it's simple. No letters, no numbers. Well, I guess numbers. You're going to need numbers. But which Pirates of the Caribbean film that's not the first one is your favorite? Let us know which one it is and tell us why it is your favorite one. But you can't pick the original. You can't pick the first one. You gotta pick something else. So let's move into our first topic. As you can see right here, it is on the screen. And it is this. IGN posted an article which ties back to The Hollywood Reporter and a host of other sources in relation to the Netflix Gears of War film. And that is, The Hollywood Reporter is reporting that David Lech, who directed Atomic Blonde, Deadpool 2, Hobbs and Shaw, Bullet Train, and The Fall Guy, is currently in negotiations to take on this film. Lech and Kelly McCormick are said to be producing alongside the coalition, and John Spates, that's a tough one to pronounce, is reportedly writing the script. This project was first announced about 2.5 years ago, but the wheels are finally turning. As well as the movie, an adult animation series is also in the works. They're just set to follow the film, of course, depending on the success. Still, as yet undetermined is who's the casting, who's going to play who. Is it going to be Bautista, as has often been the rumor? Not just by the fans, but by he himself, who is a huge fan of the franchise and wants to be part of it. Phil Spencer, Microsoft gaming chief, said back in March that the failure of Halo is not going to affect this project or any others. He said, we're learning and growing through this process, giving us more confidence that we should do more. We learned from doing Halo, we learned from doing Fallout, so all of these build on themselves, and obviously we'll have a couple that miss. But what I'd say to the community that likes this work is you're going to see more because we're gaining confidence and we're learning through this. Obviously, if you're a fan of this, coalition is working on Gears of War E-Day, which is still scheduled to come out next year, confirmed by them, despite not having a presence at Gamescom last week. So, what? Finally starting to get some details. Finally starting to get some things coming out about this. What do you guys think about the current sort of plan for the helm of this? And what do you think about casting? Do you have someone you want? Are you team Batista or are you team someone else? How are you feeling about this as we hopefully start getting more and more news about this project than we've gotten in the last 2.5 years? Randy?
So I'm going to lead off with this. Netflix, don't fuck it up. This is something that I've been waiting for a while now because I really do enjoy the series. I enjoyed the story as a whole. There's the right answer for Marcus Phoenix. That's Dave Bautista. All other answers are wrong. In my opinion, just because the dude's passionate. And usually what happens is if someone really enjoys a role or really is passionate about it, they put their best foot forward and give you the best of what potentially a character could be. And I feel like because of his love for the series, because of his love of the character, I think he would be a very fitting choice considering the gravitas he could bring just from just the look, the sound, and the presence he would have on screen. It's great to see we're finally getting some traction here. Hopefully, as time goes on, we're going to get even more and more. They're definitely right about games turning into TV series. Fallout, if you haven't seen it, you're missing out. It's absolutely fantastic. Whereas Halo, take it or leave it for what it is. I mean, that's the only thing I can say for that. Hopefully, Amazon continues to do well because they're also working on a Mass Effect TV series as well. So gaming is definitely finally transcending just being video games and turning into actual viable media. And I think it'll continue with Gears of War as long as they really do take their time, bring in the best talent they can that fit the characters and just have a really good storyline. I mean, hell, I'm excited for the fact they're doing a remake or at least a reskin for PlayStation. So a bunch of us can all play together. So that's going to be a lot of fun too. Hopefully, I'm just optimistic here that because Gears is such a big series, it has such a big fan base that Netflix is going to take the time to really listen and give the fans exactly what they deserve and something that's going to be hopefully really special and well remembered down the line.
Sean?
I'm genuinely surprised and have been since this news came out at the level of talent that is attached. Should follow this up with saying Jeff Snyder in his newsletter reported that they're basically all done deals in terms of the behind the scenes talent attached to this, which is fantastic. There's much bigger talent attached to this than I ever would have thought. I thought they would have had like a super cheap, almost B movie approach to this and just get what you could off of it based off the name. And they don't appear to be approaching it from that direction. Jeff Snyder's newsletter also clarified on the Hollywood Reporter report that the movie and the animated series are a given at this point. The animated series apparently is already being worked on. What they meant by that was, depending on how the movie does, there's an option for more movies, which makes sense. Wouldn't be the first movie series to go movie, animated series, and more movies. Years ago, I think I was okay with Dave Bautista in Marcus's role. I do question whether Dave has the same amount of interest in that role today as he had once upon a time. I'm more confident in him today as an actor to be able to do that role. And yet I still sit here and question, can he be the lead? If he is Marcus Phoenix, then you need to approach this just like the Gears of War games are approached. And that is an ensemble type cast where you're switching between 4 to 6 characters that get a lot of screen time. And, there's a world where I could see Dave Bautista being Marcus Phoenix and CM Punk being, or Phil Brooks, if you will, being Baird. I don't know if you can convince the guy to put a cigar in his mouth for most of the movie, but he would have to for that role. But you need more talent than that. You need some guys that can hold it up. And I think Batista has improved incredibly as an actor. He's just gotten better over time. He's way better than I ever would have thought he'd be capable of. And I still sit here and go, what kind of other talent are you going to attach to this? And don't put it past them to go, yeah, here's some characters from the games, but here are new characters that we're adding into it. That often happens when you're adapting a video game into something for TV and or cinema. But so far, I'm really liking what I'm hearing. I'm very excited for it. It seems like the wheels are moving. Now they just need to keep them moving because, this has been a long time coming. Probably 10 years later than it should be. But I'm really excited to see what they can do. I think it can be a lot of fun. I also think they need to find a way to do it without blowing their brains out on the budget, but still have it look good. But like it should be a big hit for Netflix.
I'm excited for this, and I have been since it was announced all those years ago. Gears was my game franchise. It still is. As far as that went, it's one of my favorite campaigns to play. Period. So I obviously am hugely excited for that. I know people who went through that with Halo, but this is the one for me. This is my thing. This is my franchise. This is the one I want. I've wanted it for a very long time. I think I don't inherently have issues with Dave as Marcus. Like you said, he's come a long way in the last 10 years, 15 years since Hollywood became his main thing. He's come a long way from the muscled up jacked guy they hired to play Drax to where he is now. He can genuinely carry a production, which is something I never would have bet on, over 10 years ago when he first started doing this. So I'm excited for it. I've seen him carry shows. I've seen him, be the main star in things and not sort of be detrimental. I would have bet that having him as the star would have been something I wasn't too excited for. Who the rest of the cast would be, your guess is as good as mine on those, unfortunately. Because there are so many great options out there for who they could be. I think the interesting one, obviously, assuming we're going all the way back to the beginning, you've got your big 4.5, I guess you'd say. But like, it will be interesting to see who plays who and what and how they lock it down. I think that Batista, as long as they're willing to pay him, which I don't see why they wouldn't. He's not a new commodity to Netflix. He did, what was the one he did a few years back? Army of the Dead, Army of something.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
So he's a known commodity to Netflix, and if I recall, that movie did stink in the end, but it still sort of had a big rollout for it and was big for a weekend until people realized it was just a shitty movie. Not that he was the reason for that, just that it was a generally shitty movie. So I don't know. I'm excited for it. I think he has the ability, he has the chops that he can do the comedy necessary and the seriousness that would also be necessary, presumptively through things like flashbacks and what have you. So it's going to be interesting as we get closer to this. I personally would love it to be Dave. When they first started this, when those rumors first started, it was a joke. It was ha ha ha, LOL. You can't be serious. Now I'd actually be happy and satisfied if they do that, because at this point, Dave is someone who, carries a high value as as far as name value goes. So, he's not like that S tier guy, but he's in that B to A minus tier. So I think they can put enough pieces around him to help him out and sort of get him over that hump. Um, as for who the rest of the characters are, I don't know.
One thing they got working with them, though, to add to your point, or working for them to add to your point, is when you want to fill out the rest of your cast with talent, people don't want to just look at, oh, hey, it's a Gears of War movie, I want to do this. Well, unless you're Batista, obviously. But like, you want to work with good writers, good directors, good talent behind the scenes, and they've positioned themselves to do that. I'm still surprised at the level of talent they've put behind the camera.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to to think that way. I'm excited for because you do have a great opportunity with sort of the main four characters, right? So you definitely have an opportunity to put together some great talent through Dom and Marcus and Coltrane and Baird, and then you've got your Carmines, which I think could be the most fun in casting, because I think you could get someone. I think you could get a big star for that because they don't have to be there.
Yeah.
Like
For
I
long
could,
anyway.
even without that.
You, Ryan Reynolds.
See, that's what I thought. Like that was the name that came to my head. Like I would love to see Ryan Reynolds as Carmine because I think it'd be fucking hilarious.
Every game had a Carmine, and they all died.
Like there's so much potential there. And I don't think we ever in any of the games ever saw Carmine's face.
Nope.
We only ever saw them wearing the mask, like wearing the helmet. So you could have
Get someone to Pedro Pascal.
exactly. You could get an S tier guy for name value and have him be the Carmines, which would be hilarious.
12 hours of voice work in the booth. That's it.
You could have a different Carmine for each movie. Which I think would be hilarious. If you get like, super S tier guys for each film's Carmine, I think that could be hilarious. But it's going to be interesting. I look forward to seeing it. I've wanted to see it for years. I was excited when they first announced it, and now here we are, several years later. I understand, times are different from when we officially got announced this to where we are today, but I'm excited for this. I look forward to seeing this, and I can't wait to be seeing this. And it's definitely something I will be watching immediately when it is released, whenever that happens to be down the road. All right, just a friendly reminder, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, set notifications to all that fun stuff. Leave a comment down below to help us with the algorithm. If you are here in the chat and want to get a shout out and you want something you say to be guaranteed to be read on air, send it as a super chat. Otherwise, we will try and get to it, but there's no guarantees unless you send it as a super chat. Now, let's move on to our next topic, and that is Pirates of the Caribbean 6. We don't know a lot about this movie as yet, but we do know things that have come out in the last few days, specifically today. Again, this is another one of those. This one here trends to an IGN article, but it's out there no matter where you look. Jerry Bruckheimer has been confirmed as saying that this film, Pirates 6, will see the return of familiar faces. We've also had Orlando Bloom, I want to say on Instagram or X, one of them posted, said that it's time to get the band back together or something to that effect. I can't seem to find an exact quote in this article, but I know I saw it somewhere that Orlando Bloom was quoted as saying it's time to get the band back together. So what do you think? Who does this mean? Is this are they priming the pump for the possibility of a Johnny return?
No, they're not just priming it. It's a given. It's it's 100% going to happen, or the film is not going to happen. It's that simple. They have tried to get additional Pirates movies off the ground since, dare I say, and I don't know when the last one was released. I want to say 2016 sounds right. 2017, somewhere in there. And they've been trying since then. I want to say we were covering this in the final days of Star Wars Wastelands. Bruckheimer has been quoted as saying he wants Depp back. He intends for Depp to be back. It sounds like Depp is more open to returning. Look, it's very simple. Johnny Depp's name got ruined. Now, did he handle things the best? No. But did his name get cleared of the shit that he was accused of? Yes. So bring him back. You know, Disney didn't have very good, and I'm not the biggest James Gunn fan, but Disney did not handle the James Gunn situation good back in the day. I would say they didn't handle the Johnny Depp situation good back in the day. Pirates 5 should have stopped filming with what was going on. I'm a huge Pirates fan, and Jack Sparrow might be the least watchable part of that movie because, you know, he comes across like Johnny's favorite Star Wars character, Jar Jar Binks, for the whole movie. And it turns out his life was a living hell during that time. To me, the thing that makes the most sense here, and I'm not saying I've heard this anywhere, is you make 2 movies. You shoot 6 and you shoot 7 back to back the same way you did 2 and 3. By the way, that question earlier about your favorite Pirates film that's not the original, there's one answer, people. It's 2. The answer is 2. Not 3, not 4, definitely not 5. It's 2. 2 is one of the best sequels ever made, in my opinion. It's that good. And by the way, Mr. Skarsgård's in that movie too. People seem to forget that. Sorry, my dog is trying to get into the room. I'm not sure why. But again, nothing official, but it's simple. I don't believe this movie gets made without Depp being involved. I don't think there's an appetite for the fans to see it, but I do think you approach it differently. I think if you're filming 2 back to back and just end it with 7 or bring an end to these characters in that universe, you know, you're always going to be open. We live in the day of franchises and sequels, so there's always going to be room to revisit it down the line. But to me, you do a movie about finding Jack Sparrow. You know, 2 is kind of that way for the first 20 minutes, but I'm talking the whole movie is about finding Jack Sparrow. For some reason, you need him. And so the first half of the movie, maybe even the first 2/3 of the movie, he's not in it. But then that final act, you don't do the Luke Skywalker where he's on the cliff at the end and that's all you get. But that final act, you involve him again, and then he's heavily involved in 7. You ease him into it a bit. I think that's the way that you do this movie. Do I have any idea what you do with stories? You can fucking pick one of many, you know, legends or lores from the material that they cover and do it. But it's simple, fellas. Sorry that I jumped the gun here, but this movie does not happen if Johnny Depp's not in it.
That's all right. You only jumped the gun by about 30 seconds because I was sending to you first because I know how much Pirates is one of your top franchises. Brandy, what about you?
I'm in a total agreement with Sean. You can't have a Pirates of the Caribbean movie without Captain Jack. You can't have Captain Jack without Johnny Depp. It just doesn't make sense. So it's definitely time to bring him back. I think it's great that Orlando Bloom's on, you know, ready to go. I just hope that with this one, obviously, you know, especially if there is another one greenlit as well, if they do shooting back to back, I just hope that the story is tight and it's not 4 and 5, to be honest. I'd like to forget about those, but no, I'm pretty excited. This is great because it felt like there was always something left that wasn't touched, that just there was always that itch there for another Pirates movie, and another good Pirates movie. Let me reiterate that. So it's one of those where it's just a fun movie. And it's hard to think that it's been so long since we've gotten one. Um, I was a huge fan of the first one. Loved the second and third movies, and then everything went downhill after that. So I'm ready. I think it's been long enough, and it sounds like things are progressing in the right direction. Next step is really just making sure Johnny Depp's on board, and I think we're good to go.
So let me see if I understand this correctly before Johnny gives his take. You're saying that you're not a fan of Pirates 4?
To me, it wasn't. I liked the first three the best, and the other two, I was just like, okay. Boo me all you want. It's my opinion. I'm entitled to it.
I thought 4 was great. I really, really liked 4 a lot. The one area I think they missed on 4 was the score a little bit. But I actually wasn't the biggest fan of 3. And 5 is just abysmal. But there's more wins with this franchise than losses. To me, that's reason to do more. And I think there's an appetite to see Johnny Depp back in a non-independent film, doing his role. But I think it needs to be approached. You can't have Jar Jar Binks 2.0 again. You can't do it that way.
You're not wrong. Man, it's crazy to think with what started off as a ride has turned into one hell of a franchise.
I did, but this is where I get to, be the party pooper, because I could not care less about any of this. Pirates is the epitome of the franchise that peaked with the first one and has been on nothing but a downhill decline since then, in my opinion. The second one was sort of a flat plateau, for the first and second one, and it just fell off the cliff after that. I don't care. I'm not inherently interested in seeing really any part of this. I have no interest in going back to their story. I don't care what Jack is up to. I don't care what, Orlando, and I just do not care anymore about these characters. While sure, it'd be nice to have Johnny back, because, let's be honest, he was the only redeeming part of any of the latter films. It's still not enough for me to care. And I personally don't have an appetite for this. If they came out tomorrow and said it was canceled, I'd just do a shoulder shrug and carry on, because I'm not that interested in it. I don't think there's a concept that they could bring these characters back that is going to make me go, oh my God, I have to see this. I think whatever it is, it's something that I'll watch when it's on Disney Plus and I'm bored. I just don't, I don't care. I really don't. And, I'm happy for those of you that do, I'm not going to yuck on your yum for you, but for me, zero interest at all in any of this. Like, yeah, it'll be good to have Johnny back in something, but at the end of the day, whether this is it or it's something else, I just do not care about Pirates anymore. So Okay.
Our little private chat. My apologies.
Where the hell's his boo, by the way? You boo me for not really liking 4, but he pisses on the rest of the damn thing, and you're just like, whatever. Thank you.
Wait. I will one up you. I think it's still on here. This is my reaction to Johnny's terrible take on pirates. Not Vince McMahon, by the way.
Yep. All right. So let's move on. Do you have a question for the audience?
Well, we kind of already asked it earlier. So we'll do this one. If you're down to see another Pirates movie with Johnny Depp, put a 1 in the chat. If you're down to see a Pirates movie without Johnny Depp, put a 2 in the chat. And if you're like our Johnny and don't want more pirates, put a 3 in the chat. So a 1 for more pirates with Johnny Depp, a 2 for more pirates without Johnny Depp, or 3, you want to be just like Johnny V and say fuck pirates.
No, don't
in which
say
case
that.
my reply,
I don't want to fuck pirates. That's how you end up with diseases. I don't want scurvy. All right, let's move on. I teased you with it earlier. I told you to put it on, take it off. Now it's time to put it on for real. So let's take off your gaming mask. Let's put on your Mandalorian mask. Let's get into Star Wars. So this one is a simple, it's not multiple choice, it's a simple yes or no question. Will the Knights of the Old Republic remake ever be released? Yes or no? Simple as that.
I'll answer this question.
Well, we'll answer this question when we get to that segment.
Oh, right. It's a segment on the show. My opinion on this has changed.
So we will you'll hear our opinion on this subject in just one short topic. This is it. This is the first question. Has Star Wars in general missed out on a golden opportunity with Shadows of the Empire? There was so much that could have come of this, beyond what they did. They rolled out the red carpet for this back in the day. With the release of it and everything that was sort of tied to it, they went to
Oh, it's mirrored. Lame. Anyways, I got like 2 hours and 47 minutes left in the re-released. Well, actually, not even re-released. A new audiobook version of it that is unabridged by the one and only Mark Thompson.
So that's the question. Have they missed out on a golden opportunity with doing anything with Shadows of the Empire? They haven't even gone the route of re-releasing it for like the game consoles, which is something you would have expected for a game like this when they've released such other luminary titles as Episode 1 Racer and just some of the other games that they've re-released in the last few years, and this one has not been touched. What do you think, Randy?
It was definitely a missed opportunity. I feel like something like this, especially given the amount of care they put into it originally, and the amount of marketing they put into it originally. I saw the soundtrack, but it's like this could have been the next animated series for Disney Plus, and bringing Dash Rendar into canon, bringing Shizor into canon, so to speak, in a way. This could have been a good opportunity to do a remaster like Dark Forces for Shadows of the Empire. I'm surprised it's not on the Switch, considering it was an N64 title. This game, book, everything they put out for it was such a great story. The game was fun. The music in it was absolutely amazing. The soundtrack is amazing by itself. And yet here it just kind of shows up quietly with little to no fanfare. I wouldn't have even known anything had come out for it if it wasn't for Sean listening to the re-released audiobook that was pretty much unedited. So we get the full thing. It's a shame because I think this is one of those types of just events, because there's so much to it that a new generation of fans really would have enjoyed to get to experience for the first time.
Sean?
Yeah. They did a massive multimedia project on this title. It wasn't just a game. It was a game. It was a comic. It was a graphic novel. It was a soundtrack. It was a novel itself. You got the level of marketing they were putting behind movies back then, and it's popularly known as the Star Wars project that had movie marketing without a movie. The impressive thing is I haven't read this since Johnny and I were in elementary. And as I've listened to this audiobook and some of the nature of the tone of this, like this goes full on Game of Thrones at times. Like, you know, you have Leia full on getting seduced in between Empire and Return of the Jedi, and Shizor shoving his tongue down her mouth and touching her. And I'm sitting here going, I was reading this in elementary school. It's a good thing my parents didn't know the subject material. Definitely the most graphic I've ever seen Star Wars. Not only is it a missed opportunity now for Disney to redevelop this into like an animated series, which they could, like, and just like a one season short story thing, not a go on for a bunch of things. They missed the opportunity back then. If you look at like Star Wars Droids, not a great show, but the animation was fine. It was standard for what was going on back then, and this is several years after that. They could have and should have done more with this and didn't. And it's a massive missed opportunity. And the only thing that doesn't line up canon wise, which is easily fixable, is in this Vader's castle's on Coruscant, and in canon, obviously, it's on Mustafar. That's an easy change. You could easily do this story again. And honestly, I've had a really hard time getting through audiobooks lately just because I've had to listen to it in small pieces here and there. But this time around, I've been glued to it. Anytime I can listen to it, I've been listening to it, and it's been I believe it's a 14-hour audiobook, and it's incredible. Really, really enjoy it, and yeah, it's a huge missed opportunity. Especially like listening to this on the heels of Andor. You know, Andor is your right before a New Hope show. I've been saying you can do something between A New Hope and Empire, and this is your in between Empire and Return of the Jedi story. You know, and it's not as simple as many Boston spies died to get this information. There's a much bigger twist to it than that. So, you know, there's just so much going on in this. You're getting all the big guys, but you're also getting the, you know, the ground level guys.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge. You know, it was the first time something that wasn't a Star Wars film got a full-on action figure line. You know, like that was huge. You know, back then, that was, you know, action figures is and was one of the bread and butters of Star Wars. You know, it was a huge part of its, you know, success and catapulting it into the zeitgeist was the action figures. You know, being such a huge part of, you know, everyone's growing up and youth and childhood. And it was really the like at the time it was the only experience we had of that. You know, we'd get it again a few years later with episode 1, but at the time we'd never seen that. You know, we'd never experienced that. Something new, something, you know, and that was it. You know, if you didn't read the books, you didn't really get new in Star Wars. You know, it was just telling stories you already knew from different perspectives or different parts of it. You know, the events were always the same. But this was new. This was original, and it wasn't something you needed to, you know, be an avid book reader or anything like that to do. I mean, I'd argue that it sort of helped the books, you know, become more prevalent, you know, in the 90s and 2000s, and leading up to the buyout, and it was such a huge part of that having done nothing with it since then is ridiculous. Not canonizing the characters in it, I think, is ridiculous. Bringing these guys in is just, it's asinine to me. Like, specifically Dash. Like, what are we doing? Why are we not doing this? Why is he not a part of this? Like, we can argue, the Legends canon and be like, well, it's Legends, you don't bring in that. Like, I'll accept that argument with anything that comes after episode 6, because that's the point of divergence, right? That's where the timeline changes from what we sort of grew up reading about to what Disney made it once they bought it. I'll accept that. I'll allow that. But there were not nearly as many sort of things prior to that, like prior to 6, that haven't in some form or fashion come into the canon. The Old Republic is the big one, that people will point to be like, well, they didn't bring that. Well, they have, though. Every major event of the Old Republic has been brought forward. Darth Bane and being the one who created the Rule of Two canon. Revan canon. It just, every part of that, are there little bits and pieces that they've changed and tweaked, and we know they're playing with the timeline in a much bigger fashion by shortening it, which I think is ridiculous, but it's what they're doing. And not bringing this is ridiculous, because it would have been so easy to at the very least bring Dash over. Like, let's be real, there's no reason for me that Dash Rendar has not showed up in The Mandalorian. Like, at the least. Like, you don't want to bring him into the films, I get that. But you want to explain to me how he doesn't fit in The Mandalorian? Like, there's so much potential there to bring these characters forward. And the game, leaving it behind, is ridiculous. Like we've said, there's an entire collection on the Switch that doesn't include this game. And it's not even a part of the like the N64 flashback games that are available to play in Switch Online. Like, it's ridiculous that they haven't done something with this. And it is one of, in my opinion, it is one of the best pure story-driven games of that era.
Worth remaking, to be honest. Not just, brushing up.
Oh, absolutely.
It's ridiculous that it's been left in the dirt when there is so much here that you can do to sort of reinvigorate a time period where it sort of needs some degree of reinvigoration. It's important. It's a part of the story that needs to be told. It's in a place in the story where there isn't really anything going on, and it's inexcusable to me that they haven't done something with the game, with the characters, or both. So let's move on to our next topic. We sort of teased it off the top here. We are now going on, when was this game announced? Like 2020 for Star Wars Eclipse?
I don't know if Eclipse is that old.
Maybe 21. Like, I don't think it was that recent. I feel. Let me Google this to see if I can pull this up quickly. But
I think it's been in production for a few years now.
December 9th, 2021.
Okay, so it was 21, not 20. Either way, we're coming up to 5 years now. And to this point, we've seen nothing, really. Like, we've seen a couple of teaser trailers, I think, and I don't believe either of them were in-engine games. I think they were purely cinematics.
Which is kind of what the game's going to be anyway.
Well, yeah, but, It's not even in-engine cinematics though, which is the difference, right? They're pure computer cinematics. And we'll throw, the Knights of the Old Republic remake into that, which has gone through the ringer in its production cycle. Guys, do you think we're ever going to see either of these? Like, we're going on 5 years for Eclipse, and the remake for Knights of the Old Republic is even older than that, I believe. I want to say they announced that in like 2019.
So I went to jump the gun on this earlier, and I'll be brief on it. I've been of the opinion for years that the Knights of the Old Republic remake is going to happen just because of the value that it holds. It's a messy development. They handed it off to Aspire, who had been doing a lot of the the brush ups on the old games and releasing them on Switch and on PC, but did not have the manpower to take on a project like this. And honestly, at the end of the day, you kind of got to put the ball at Lucasfilm's foot. So, you should have known better handing off a project the scale of a Knights of the Old Republic remake to them. And we went through another Gamescom and various other gaming conventions that have happened this year with not a peep out of them. Now, I'm not saying either game is never going to happen. But what I'm saying is until I see something new that's substantial from specifically the Knights of the Old Republic remake, if I was a betting man, I'd say it's not going to happen. Yes, there's still a skeleton crew of people working on things, and it's moved studios a couple of times and likely isn't a PlayStation exclusive anymore. But it just seems like, you're band-aiding things. You're patching things up, and eventually, patches leak, holes leak. And hey, I'm the Knights of the Old Republic guy. I'm done waiting, though. I'm ready to replay those first two games. I've been waiting and holding off, and I'm not going to hold off anymore because I don't know when we're ever going to see it. Star Wars Eclipse, there was an update fairly recently that things are starting to go in the right direction there. They've never really had the people doing it, which are the people behind Heavy Rain and Detroit Becoming Human, and they've never really had a good combat system for those games. And they were trying to develop a combat system to work with their cinematic storytelling system that they have. And it sounds like they've made some progression there. Here's my bet. I'm placing no bets on Knights of the Old Republic, but I believe Star Wars Eclipse is tied to our last topic.
So for me, I'm still going to hold out hope we get the KOTOR remake, just basically because we've seen games be in developmental hell for years. I mean, granted, the one Duke Nukem game was pretty much shit, but it still came out. Dead Island 2 actually came out after being in developmental hell for years and was actually fairly decent. So I can't sit there and say that this is never coming out. I feel like they should have gone back to the source to see if BioWare would be willing to give it a shot, since they are the original creators of the game. But that's just them being cost effective with, trying to do a remake.
Pre-EA BioWare. A lot of people, I'm not saying you got it confused, but I see a lot of people out there who still don't understand that EA now owns BioWare. I don't know how that slipped over people's minds. And the EA Star Wars relationship, not a great one at the moment.
Very true. But at the time, it still wasn't that bad when they actually announced it, or they were working towards announcing it. So there was a missed opportunity there while EA still had rights.
I'd go back to Obsidian too, man. I don't know what.
Oh yeah, Obsidian has been knocking out of the park lately with their games. They've been absolutely amazing. And from what I understand, Grounded 2, they're just getting ready to release, and that's been well received already as well. So yeah, Obsidian definitely knows what they're doing right now.
The second game's great. It's not their fault that friggin' LucasArts cut the release time in half. Like, you get told, well, make this full game for us, but oh, by the way, halfway through the production, you have half the amount of time that we were originally going to give you. What do you think was going to happen?
Yeah, it's a shame, but I love that game. I still played the hell out of it. As for Eclipse, I figured Quantic Dream would eventually get their shit together and finally put something out. They've always been a very story-driven studio with all their releases, going all the way back to Indigo Prophecy back in the day, with on the original, I think on the original Xbox and PlayStation 2. Uh, that's always been their thing. QTEs, quick time events, have always been part of their combat and decision making. And obviously, as we know, Star Wars, you can't really do that. It's kind of like the whole idea of trying to play Dragon's Lair, but turn it into Star Wars. So instead of getting Han shooting first, you get Greedo blowing his head off because you hit the button the wrong direction. It's something like that. We can't. So obviously, yes, they need something that's a little more fluid, a little more controllable, and I can see why they ran into such issues trying to put this into their style of game. But I'm pretty confident that once they get it figured out, the story will probably be really tight. It'll be really emotionally driven, and there'll be so many different endings to that game. Replayability is going to be really big with this. I'm pretty confident Eclipse is going to be actually one of those gems when it finally comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, and I've been thinking this for a very long time, I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell we see the Knights of the Old Republic remake. I think there's just been too much chaos going on there. I think there's still too much chaos going on there. From, like you said, we started with Aspire, and then we went to Saber, which was owned by Embracer, and Embracer sold Saber. And it's like, it's hands up. Who even owns the company now?
They own themselves now.
It just, well, they're privately owned, so we don't know who's actually pulling the strings there. But it's not, one of the major corporate entities.
People are working on the game apparently, but like, if it's a skeleton crew, what are you gonna get, right? Like, I think there's a better chance that they start work on a new Knights of the Old Republic game, and they don't call it a remake, and it comes out before this thing ever comes out.
Yeah, I don't think, I do not think there's a snowball's chance in hell of it happening. I really don't. Eclipse, I'm confident it is going to come out. Because I think Quantic Dream is much more equipped to deal with the longer cycle. That's how their games generally go from announce to release. It's always a longer sort of window. I'd have to go back and actually look to see from announce to actually coming out, but I feel like most of their games are in the 6 to 7 years from the time they're announced to when we actually get to play them.
It'll be the most replayable Star Wars game ever if it ever comes out.
Assuming that it is exactly like other things they've put out there.
That's what they've claimed.
At the same time, there are still a lot of those sort of games that are sort of all roads lead to Rome type thing, where you can have a lot of branching ways to get there, but your destination is sort of set. And I could see that sort of happening with, depending on how Disney wants to sort of, and by that I mean, your Kathleen Kennedys and the people controlling the story and how they want, how canon they want these stories to be. If it's locked in that the events are canon, I could see it being, I don't want to say linear because that's not accurate, but sort of an all roads lead to Rome as to how the story concludes. But the road you take to get there will still be, much more replayable in that regard. Even if they don't go that route, and if they sort of do there's one canon ending, but there's a whole lot of other non-canon endings, that's entirely possible too. So, like, I'm excited for that. I've loved everything else they've done. So, I think we'll see this one eventually. It was also announced. It was actually just announced a couple months after the Knights of the Old Republic remake. That was September, and then in December at the Game Awards was when we first got Eclipse that same year in 2021. So, I think we're much more closer to that than we are Knights of the Old Republic. Not just from all of the chaos and calamity that has gone on in that one's production cycle, but as far as Eclipse and how Quantic Dream works, I think we're closer to that, and I think we'll get it. I think we'll likely see this one in 2027, which leads us to our final topic of the evening, which isn't so much a topic. We'll have more time to talk about this as things go on, but Kathleen Kennedy has claimed that Lucasfilm is planning a massive 2027 to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Star Wars. Now, we know the Levi Gosling Starfighter film is currently scheduled to be released in that year. What else have they got cooking beyond that? Randy?
So, in my opinion, I think it's pretty obvious we're going to get a re-release of A New Hope. Hopefully, not, no more further alterations are needed. But I think, you're going to get your typical conventions and whatnot. But I think maybe we'll get some maybe we'll get some new games. Maybe we'll get some books or comic series or new or animated series on Disney Plus, something that's just all going to tie into celebrating 50 years of Star Wars. And it could be a year-long celebration for all we know, because it's such a huge milestone. And if anybody has the money to pull off an all-year celebration, it would be Disney. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, it's an exciting time. The fact that Star Wars is going to be 50, that's crazy to me. But I just can't wait to see what happens.
Sean?
You'll get the movie. The Tales of seems to be an every year thing. We have no idea what the TV slate is after Ahsoka for 2026. We know that they intend to scale back to one a year. So my guess is you'll get a new live action TV show of some sort in that year. And I think you're going to get one of these two games finally. I think you'll get either Star Wars Eclipse or the KOTOR remake. You've waited this long. You might as well wait until the 50 year. In terms of anything else, could be announcements, could be production starting dates. Dustin says Rey movie. There's zero chance that happens. I'm not saying there's zero chance the Rey movie ever happens, although I'm not far off from that. I'm simply saying that it's too soon, way too soon. That want to talk about production problems. That thing's had just as many problems as the KOTOR remake. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think Starfighter is a given. TV series of some kind is a given. I am still holding out hope that the screening in London last week is sort of a teaser, test the water thing, and give me that. Give me the original release again, because, I want that.
Did you see the reports coming out from that?
I don't care.
It looks awful. It's
terrible. I guess it's a good thing they've got 2 years to touch it up and make it look pretty.
Well, then it ain't the original anymore if they do that.
Well,
they already did that. Did you not?
Still the original cut.
Oh my god,
that's the important thing.
Yeah, you know what? I think you have them. It's a trilogy set. At least you used to have them. They're VHSs. They're black. Vader's on the cover of A New Hope, and Stormtroopers on the cover of Empire. Yoda's on the cover of Return of the Jedi. And that was 3 years or 4 years before the special editions came out. So you have that cut brushed up. No, the reports are, it was fucking awful. And these aren't just like content creators or whatever. This is the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline and like that. It's just, there's a reason George Lucas didn't want you seeing this in that form. Hard pass. We don't need to see it. It's terrible. They re-released them on DVD, by the way, in maybe 2006 or 7, in and around there, somewhere in between the 04 and 07 range. They put them all out on DVD, and they've never been out since. I don't care to see them, frankly. I like what they've done with them for the most part, but I do understand where Johnny's coming from. A lot of people wanted them. I just don't think anybody expected the horrible reviews to come out that they did. It's a 50-year-old movie. What are people expecting?
Clearly, they're expecting Jaws when that came out for its 50th.
Guess what? The shark in Jaws doesn't look good, people. Spielberg hated it.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap us up for this week's episode. You can, of course, join us every Tuesday night right here live for the Mask of Fear. we want to say thank you once again to all of our sponsors and patrons over at patreon.com/the Mask of Fear. If you want to be featured in this, you can join as a sponsor, or you can just join at whatever level you want to be, and you can be featured here on this graphic. Otherwise, like, subscribe, comment, set notifications all to help us fight the evil algorithm, and you will get a chance to see all of our content whenever we put it out. Sean, anything you want to plug this week?
Yeah, Matt and I are recording the first episode of The Curse of Thorn Thursday, where we talk about some of the information that we got on the early Halloween series treatments. Now, whether that series happens or not, as we talked about earlier in this video, depends greatly on what happens over at the volatile nature of Miramax. And then next week, we dive into all things Halloween Kills behind the scenes, including things that were on the table to happen that ultimately did not. And check us out on Facebook. The Legacy of Halloween is one of our groups, as well as the Mask of Fear, which Johnny and Randy have been doing a bang-up job on. You can also check us out on our socials, which is at the Mask of Fear on Blue Sky, Facebook, and X. Patreon's patreon.com/the Mask of Fear. Instagram is the Mask of Fear 31.
And Randy?
You can find me over on X at Giggity Giles. I promise I'm trying to get better about posting other than just reposting the stuff that Sean already posts. Also, if memory serves me correctly, tomorrow night after Dynamite, we're going to be recording some of our first Patreon content for, I believe, wrestling, if Sean can confirm that. So
it'll be wrestling heavy for sure. I mean, we need to see what happens with the news day. You never know what happens. We seem to get cursed with news on Wednesday. So,
this is very true.
But right now, the intent's to do some wrestling coverage, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, is Hangman versus Moxley announced?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's definitely going to be a talking point.
That was made official at the pay-per-view when he won the match.
Though another match that's been announced or being hinted at, we'll talk about on the Patreon as well. It's not one that Johnny wants, but I guess you'll just have to tune in and find out.
Ooh, I don't even know what he's talking about. So this will be.
I don't know which one you're talking about that I don't want.
You'll find out tomorrow night.
And then we have our new Patreon show all about the Repo Man. It's us reviewing old Repo Man matches. Tune in. Just kidding. Sort of. Maybe. Not really. I don't know.
There's so much wrong with that. I don't even know where to begin to unpack it.
Don't you dare
if
say
you try
bad
to
thing
do
about
that
the
show,
Repo Man.
If you try to do that show, I'm going to hire the Repo Man to steal your microphone.
Fun story, Dustin. My kid has had a big shark stuffy since he was a year old, and its name is... Who's got it? Bruce. If you know, you know.
He's going to need a bigger boat. You can find me here, there, everywhere, here every Tuesday night on the Patreon. Every now and again, you'll see my beautiful face pop up there, too. Twitch.tv/bros before pros. We'll be there sometime soon. 2.0 update of 7 Days to Die came out this week, so try and get some peeps together to play that with me at some point in the near future. Just don't ask me when.
Oh, congratulations to the Florida Panthers, by the way. Edmonton choked again.
No, we're not congratulating those assholes.
Oh, for sure. Hey, I'm a Leafs fan, but I didn't want Edmonton to win.
Yeah,
it's 97, one step closer to exiting.
Well, yeah, that'd be nice, but, I don't think it's going to matter until old GB just decides to retire, and then maybe you'll see a Canadian team win. But until then, I digress. Sean, send him home happy.
Well, we appreciate everything you guys do. A couple of new patrons this past week, Timothy and Dustin, thank you. And to everybody else that's on Patreon, we thank you. We always appreciate when anyone's willing to spend their hard-earned money on what we do here at the channel. We don't take it for granted. The truth is we can't do it without some level of financial support. For Johnny and Randy, for everybody behind the scenes, I'm Sean, and we'll see you next week on The Mask of Fear.